Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Alt Left. This is episode 3 of our third season. As always, there is me, Drew, and Kay with us.
Good evening, everyone.
Greetings from the Weasel timeline.
Actually have a special guest. We have our friend Julie. She is a reporter and journalist for Left Voice. She's also heavily involved in her union, the SEIU. She's a social worker. She's a big old leader in Purple Up for Palestine, getting unions out of Zionist crap. And she can introduce herself far better than I can. So go ahead and say hi.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Julie Wallace, Left Voice, part of the Izquierda Diario Network, which is the international kind of sibling organization with Left Voice in 14 different countries, 7 different languages. I don't speak all of those, but we write in them. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about what's going on.
I will also put a link to all the Left Voice stuff. It's actually a really cool online mag. I actually watch it and read it regularly. They have a really good Instagram. It's pretty active. It's really, really cool. So we'll post a link on the Twitter. I've actually posted a couple articles on our Twitter like a year ago. Left Voice is rad. Everyone should go check it out.
Wait, we still use Twitter?
we do. We still we don't use Twitter. I'm not ever on it, but we do post our episod links.
Got it. Okay, I was just Twitter. Making sure because I remember a dark time where
that was back in the Matt days when he liked to be very active.
Matt did like to argue with people on the Twitters.
Yeah, I literally just did it so I could crap on Instagram all day long.
He deserved it, and. Yeah.
And Matt's was Ted Cruz. I remember that.
God, Matt hated Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, so well deserved.
But yeah, let's talk about the donkey in the room. The Democrats.
Donkey and the elephant.
It's
you
really
mean
more
the
donkey.
lack thereof Democrats?
Yeah.
Because holy shit.
Yeah, in a stunning move, committing a genocide, propping up a senile old man. Telling protesters to shut up that you're speaking, not holding a primary. These apparently weren't winning moves. And they really got the shit kicked out of them. So what does everyone think about that? Julia, you first. You're the guest.
All right. I think that the Democratic Party strategy was to really move to the right and to actually abandon a lot of social issues and groups that they basically had a parasitic relationship off of. So specifically the immigrant rights movement. In 2006, there was close to 2 million people that protested in Day Without an Immigrant. They didn't organize that. They had a parasitic relationship to it. And then they tried to co-opt it, and they did, kind of buying off a lot of those NGOs. And so then it's gone from that to kids in cages, how they're concerned about unaccompanied minors, to really labeling immigrants as criminals. So they abandoned that. Black people, they said they kneeled with the kente cloth in 2020, going from that to giving more money to police departments.
God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. More money to police
Nancy
departments.
Pelosi and her 6-inch heels.
With the police killing more Black people in record numbers every single year after that. Really, you, instead of codifying Roe versus Wade and abortion rights, really using it as a bargaining chip. So, and abandoning trans rights. So to me, it's all these social movements that they claim to support, abandoning those things to try to pivot right, having, Miss Cheney campaigning with Harris. And this is what happened. You can't out Trump. He's that person, and they're not. And so I think that's part of that. It's a real crisis for the Democratic Party, and a realignment of the Republican Party to a more populist rhetoric. And they were able to gain more sectors of Latino people, gain more sectors of Black people, Black men in particular, although not by leaps and bounds, but a significant margin. and have maintained their support from white women. So I feel like this what has happened, and I'll just wrap it up in a sec, as an initial thought, is that the Democratic Party has been the party to destroy mobilizations, the graveyard of social movements, but both parties have been the parties of capital, and they really thought that that they could just abandon and ignore Palestine, that they could just abandon and ignore all these social issues and people would just vote for them anyways. And they got a rude awakening. One thing I just want to make sure to mention is the people that abstained from voting, um, because it wasn't. We have a two-party system, right? It's a two capitalist party system, and a lot of people didn't even vote for third party. I think Jill Stein got less votes than she got in 2020, and the PSL candidate didn't even break a million, not even a quarter of a million nationally. So people didn't vote for them, but they were still disgusted with Trump and Harris. And there's a good amount of people that refuse to participate in this electoral process. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when we think about how we're going to mobilize other folks to really fight against the probable onslaught of right-wing attacks on the working class and oppressed people.
Yeah, I voted for De La Cruz, and I couldn't believe how low her and Stein's numbers were. Like, I kind of thought this is going to be like, okay, this will be the year of third party, right? Because we got fucking the Orange Fuhrer and we've got Holocaust Harris, and between the two of them, like, people are going to flock to third party. And I thought, hey, even the Libertarians will get a bump. Like, fuck them, but whatever. Like, every third party is going to get a bump, and no, they all got shafted. Everyone. Yeah, you're right. People just checked out of the entire process.
They abstained. I wouldn't say checked out because that would mean they didn't care. I feel like people care.
Fair enough. That's a fair distinction.
Well, but abstaining and not, I mean, however you call it, they didn't vote. So last election 2020, there was 158 point roughly 4 million votes that were counted. That's both Dem, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. That's the number. This year, we have about 146 million votes.
Well, now, question though, do we know, is that votes for president, or is that votes in general? Because that's the thing, is you can decide you're not going to play the president game and still vote local and still vote for state and local measurement.
Yeah, and that is sort of what happened in a lot of the red states.
As far as I understand, those are presidential votes. Okay. So, this year, now obviously not everything is counted, but from my understanding, it's about 146 million votes. So that's a disparage of 12 million votes. Now, 12 million doesn't sound like a lot when you talk about 145 or 146 million, but that's like 8%. So 8% of the people that voted in 2020 didn't vote this year.
Yeah, and Americans already have absurdly low voting numbers in general.
Yeah.
So it just shows me there's lower turnout. More people were disheartened. They were not interested in the race. They weren't interested in voting for one or the other. They simply just didn't do it. You know, I think it goes to show how disinterested a lot of people are in voting, period.
Well, but I think there's a big difference between disinterested and refusing to do so. There is a difference. Like, there's a lot of people who had no interest in voting for president because they didn't want to pick which socket to plug the fork into, but still give a shit about what's going on. I think refusing to participate is the better term.
Yeah, I think this is a very politicized group of people. I think that the consciousness of that, and the difference also in 2020 is because of the pandemic, there was more mail-in ballots, there was more like accessible ways that people could engage than there were this year. But even saying that, I think that there's like a consciousness of disgust. I think there's a lot of people that were like, this is not, neither one of these people represent me, and that Stein and the PSL also didn't represent them. And maybe because people hadn't heard of them, but also some disagreements. People, the PSL's like perspective about Iran and Russia. Some people, a lot. I don't agree with it. Like a lot of people don't agree with it. Not Stein. Cruz, the PSL candidates. And so like
Yeah.
I think that there was like a lot of like disgust of that around that, and I think at the same time this year has been very like politicized with strikes and protests and
It
things like
has.
that.
It has.
Well, I voted De La Cruz, and I honestly thought De La Cruz was the best candidate on the ballot. I don't think De La Cruz is perfect, and the PSL definitely has some fucking issues. They are not perfect whatsoever. However, of leftist movements that get on the ballot, they were the best choice. And again, I usually will never say, fuck voting for the lesser of evils. Like, don't vote for evil. But De La Cruz's platform was enough that I was like, okay, there's enough good shit on here that I can get behind this. And I can put my vote to it. But I gotta tell you, if it hadn't been, I wouldn't have voted for anyone for president. Like, I still would have voted, because fucking California slavery was on the ballot this year.
Right.
Like,
that was one that I was...
Yeah, there was so much shit that is not getting any traction. We couldn't raise minimum wage. We couldn't get fucking rent control. We fucking felonized shoplifting. Are you kidding me? Holy shit.
That's another one of those that just blew my mind.
Yeah, the felonizing shoplifting doesn't surprise me at all, especially in, like, California, because
a propaganda
Sorry,
machine has been happening from the bourgeois media about people stealing and
people steal from
showing,
Macy's.
and all that
Yeah, I
stuff.
don't fucking care.
This ballot measure was funded almost completely by Walmart and the California Grocers Association. Like, petty crime that they get insurance paid for, but they illustrated that, and I think that shows the contradiction, because at the same time, same-sex marriage passed, right? That passed in California. The Conservation Act, that also passed in California. So it's a very, like, I would say, and also they're still counting the votes in California. I think it's about 60% of the votes have already been counted, so there's about 40 more left. So there's still, to me, it just represents like contradictory measures. The Democrat are now Republican, so abortion, we don't really give a fuck. Well, you guys go ahead and have it. Life schmife. I mean, I obviously I'm supportive of abortion rights, but like that's what they talk about. Life. You got to save the fetus. Blah, blah, blah. But like clearly people in these Republican states want to be able to have abortion, and they want to be able to vote for Trump at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and with this, they get a supermajority. They got all three branches of government now, and so
and
it's
the
one
Supreme
of those,
Court, like all of it.
Yeah, Republican strategists aren't stupid. They're evil, but they're not fucking stupid. And they know that once they have this supermajority, they're going to be able to pass whatever the fuck they want, which is, again, another one where I hate the scare tactics that libs will always try to use. Like, Project 2024. It's like, okay, but you do realize that Project 2025 was written not yesterday. This is an old playbook, and at any point in time, the Democratic federal government could have done anything to stop the Heritage Foundation. Again, the DNC, again, I've talked about this, I think, on another earlier podcast. Like, the DNC won't even label the Klan as a domestic terrorist organization.
No.
They won't label the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys. They won't go after actual domestic terrorists who are instituting white nationalism with violence. They could do any of this anytime they wanted. People, they want to fucking say, like, oh, well, the Republicans are so evil on the border. Well, then how come Kamala said she was going to come out and be to the right of Trump? And Biden cut down asylum seekers. And we have more kids in fucking cages, which were facilities built by Obama and Biden. And we have two governors who brag about human trafficking. And at any point, Biden could have fucking sent federal marshals to go arrest them. He could have made a fucking example. Federal marshals could have been sent in, human trafficking, put cuffs on him, drag him out of fucking office and say, try me. Who else wants to violate the Supreme Court and fucking cut people open? But no, they never did it. They never fucking cared. So it's like, to hear them care about Project 2025, I just don't believe it. I don't believe the Democrats give a shit about body autonomy. I don't think they give a shit about immigrants. And I don't think they give a shit about any social movement that doesn't involve Wall Street or private prisons.
I agree with you. I think that all of that for them are talking points. That's all it is. It's a distraction for them simply to have something to say and to oppose the right. If you think any fucking politician cares about you as a person, as an individual, you are fucking lying to yourself. You are mistaken. It is very, very rare that any, like, and when I'm talking about a politician, I'm not talking about somebody in the city that actually wants their city to be better. I'm talking about federal, state governments.
Federal two-party.
Yeah, federal
I think
two-party,
it's
large
yeah.
state government. That's what I'm talking about. They don't care about you. They're not interested in supporting you. They're interested in re-electing themselves and keeping themselves as the status quo.
What are you talking about? AOC went down to the border and cried in front of detention centers and then completely forgot about it once the election was over.
Exactly, because there's still more kids in cages today.
No, it was worse. It was worse than her forgetting about it. She immediately said, "Well, the issue's actually pretty complicated."
Well, and there's nothing that I can do by myself.
I think
Thanks.
that part of it is that the politics of these political parties is to defend capitalism. That's what it is. It's
Well,
not,
yeah.
and
that's
and
why
so
they're Big
that's
Tent
why
parties.
I'm saying, like, because I think that, like, when we think about, like, politicians or engaging in, like, the political capitalist bourgeois system that we live under, that is, it's also important to, like, engage politically, but, like, with the politics of, like, revolution and socialism. And, like, so that to me, that's another, like, aspect of that. Because if you're a capitalist politician, well, then how are you going to get the proletariat to support you? So the Republicans and Democrats have different strategies for how they get the proletariat to support them. Right? So, like, the Republican strategy is very, like, open chauvinism. Obviously,
It's all culture war shit.
both of them
Yeah.
support chauvinism, but, like, that's
Yeah.
more of their playbook. The Democratic parties is, like, social movements. So, like I mentioned, the immigrant rights movement. They didn't start that; they destroyed it. Um, and so, like, that's what they do. They don't start movements; they end them. And like, they take control over them, and they have their proxies, like, help to kind of, like, filter them out or lead them back into the system, which is what they did with Black Lives Matter, both in 2016 and in 2020. And so I guess, like, what I want to also point out, and also our comrades are in Argentina, and they're in Congress. They got elected, but they ran under a revolutionary socialist program. So our group in Argentina, if you are interested, it's called the PTS, the Partido Trabajadores Socialistas, or the Party of Socialist Workers. And so, there's a woman, her name is Miriam Bregman. She's a lawyer. She was a lawyer to prosecute the people who participated in the Dirty War in the 80s. So she's does that, but she's obviously a socialist. And we have some other people, a garbage worker, an indigenous garbage worker. He was also elected to Congress. And so there are people who, like, engage in class struggle, like, literally fight the police on the front lines and then go to Congress and then call on Congress to fight them as well. And, like, the reason why I mention this in particular is because the president of Argentina, Milei, is kind of like a Trump kind of figure. He said he was going to privatize public education. He said he was going to take away retirement. And then what happened? A bunch of elderly people fought the cops in the streets. A bunch of students created assemblies in their universities and took them over, inspired by Palestine, but also to fight for their own thing. And he had to retreat from those big talks. And so I'm mentioning that to say, like, because it's easy to feel like gloom and doom, like, oh no, they control all the branches of government, but they don't control the class struggle. And like, that's what we can do when they come for us, which they will. When they come for us, like, we fight back and we don't stop, and we don't just stop to maintain what we have, but, like, fight for more with, like, a perspective that's, like, beyond the confines of, like, this bourgeois society. So I feel like that's something that I feel like, as we think about this election, like, what are we gonna do? Like, that's something that we should try to prepare to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little disheartened, but I'm hoping now it's going to come back. I mean, when Trump was in office the first time, we had John Brown gun clubs, popping up.
Oh
And we had
SRA.
Yeah, and we also and we had SRAs popping up. Like, this was getting big. And I gotta tell you, I've now had 2 different people reach out to me saying, like, hey, I've got a group of queer friends, can you come teach us how to shoot? I'm like, fuck yes, I will teach any leftist who wants to shoot. We need class solidarity and self-defense, because it's not about shooting down a helicopter, it's about defending your community and your comrades when the red hats show up. That's what fucking
And also,
matters.
like, think about the ILWU, the longshoremen. Okay, so like they went on strike for Palestine. They went on.
They
strike
weren't
for
fucking
Black
around
Lives
either.
Matter.
Yeah, that was great.
They weren't.
Yeah,
Local 10, shout out Bay
don't
Area.
fuck with the shoremen.
So the longshoremen are very politicized, and like and especially I feel like the pandemic made us so much more aware of like logistics and like trade and like how things get from one place to another. So if we imagine like these unions that are politicized, like organizing workers, organizing people who aren't in unions, like what if that happened, we would have so much more organized economic power to be able to make different kinds of moves. Like, I'm for people defending themselves, and we're gonna have to, but like we also got to do it in a way that's also has our economic powers like in mind, especially in California. FIFA's coming. The Olympics are coming. Like, what are we gonna do? Because the new police chief, I forget his name, some fool. He's like one of the highest paid
Who
police
cares?
chiefs in the country. What's that? Did I say?
And I mean, no, I was just saying for the new police chief. Who cares? He's going to be like every other chief of the LAPD.
But he's really highly paid, and there's a reason.
Yeah.
He's got work to do. They're gonna beat the shit out of people. They're gonna attack homeless people. As I've mentioned, I'm a social worker. I work with people who are homeless with severe mental illness. So right now, just a little bit about jobby job stuff, but like they're doing the carrot before the stick. So right now, they're trying to house certain people who are homeless because that's easier, right? And then what's going to be happening, and what's already happening, is the sweeps and that kind of stuff, and this law that just passed about shoplifting. I mean, who do we think is going to be filling these freaking jails? And now they got a double whammy, because now they get to make them work for pennies, because that other proposition didn't pass. Anyway, it fucking pisses me off.
Well, they've always been able to make them work for pennies.
Well, and once they're felons, they don't qualify for... Felons don't qualify for Section 8. Felons don't get to vote. Felons don't get fucking CalFresh and food stamps. Like, once you felonize someone, you can then completely remove your obligation to act in any kind of humanity towards them. And then you can just increase recidivism, get them back into prison, get them back into slave labor. Like, that is the pipeline.
And for further preparation for that, Gascon, the LADA, was voted out as well.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
We got the new fucking DA.
And he got ran out of the Bay Area. And BLM LA
he did, but the guy that voted in is worse.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You can't be a DA and not be a piece of shit. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yes, of course he's a cop. He's always going to be on their side. But the things that he ran on initially were at the very least trying to, if not solve the problems, at least lessen some of it to a certain extent. Like, I mean, Undine Bass ran on the same sort of thing when she was running for mayor. Look what Karen Bass is doing right now. Yeah, I was just saying, Gascon was sort of on that side, and even the microscopic changes that he was trying to do got his ass thrown out.
Yeah, I mean, Karen Bass keeps getting all of this publicity as being like, oh my god, she's so forward-thinking and shit. First of all, she's a fucking Zionist. But secondly, her anti-homeless, her homeless programs are bullshit. They're all smoke and mirrors. Like, again, I don't work for the county like Julie does. I work for a 501c3. I work for a food bank. And we serve a lot of unhoused people, and we deal with a lot of this. And what they're doing is when they're going through these pre-sweeps, that's how they do it, right? Is they basically remove culpability. They say, look, I know a sweep went through, but beforehand we sent social workers and we sent people down and they gave out lollipops and they told everyone, here's where you can get housing. And we just listed like 5 places where they can be robbed, murdered, and sexually assaulted. And, just fucking told them to go fuck themselves. And then for some reason...
I work for, the service area to the valley, and there's no winter shelters.
Nope, nothing. Fucking
Not
nothing.
That's because it
not a
doesn't
one.
get cold in the valley.
It's it's terrifying because people are going to die.
That
And
that's
like more
sarcasm,
people,
folks. If
and
you didn't
no,
get
no,
it.
I know. More people die from hypothermia in LA than they do in New York or Chicago or
Well, yeah,
Boston or
because
any of those places.
people
Because
here
it
don't
rains.
realize that it gets fucking cold.
And
And it
it
gets
rains and
wet.
you
Like,
sleep
that's the
And it
outside.
gets
wet
wet.
rain.
The double whammy is fentanyl. So if you smoke it,
Sure,
you don't
absolutely.
necessarily realize that you're cold. And so
Yeah.
fentanyl deaths have increased 300%. Like it is horrible. And to see Karen Bass, who was lauded as like this progressive, oh, she's a nurse, rah, rah, and like that's the thing about very surface identity politics. Like, so she's the first black female mayor. That is important, okay? So it is, because it's a racist ass country. Um, but at the same time, her politics are maintaining white supremacy. The politics of, you can be homeless here, you can't be homeless here. If you're homeless here, we're gonna fucking throw you in jail. So there's no homeless people in Hancock Park, right? Never seen a homeless person on the streets in Hancock Park. Why not? Because that's where the mayor's house is. That's where the
Mm-hmm.
diplomats are. That's where all their mansions are. So you can be homeless in Koreatown, which is 2 blocks away. You can't be homeless in Hancock Park, and if you are, we're gonna fuck you up. And that's kind of like what they're gearing up towards, and I feel like what we are gearing up towards in terms of like resisting them.
Well, and I mean that happened in the valley too. There's a little tiny itty bitty neighborhood called Warner Center in the West Valley, and for those of you who aren't in California, the valley is the suburbs of Los Angeles proper, to the north of it, and in this little tiny area called Warner Center, and it's actually a center. It's business, right? Like Anthem Blue Cross is there. Like a lot of the major healthcare companies. It's very small. It's like 4 blocks, but there's a lot of major corporate business headquarters there, and they built this huge, giant concrete bus stop, right? Slightly elevated above the ground with lots of shelter. And then we had massive flooding and rain, so of course unhoused people fucking flocked there so they wouldn't die. And then commuters didn't like that. And people who were trying to take the buses to their corporate jobs didn't like that, and so the cops came through and literally did an insanely violent sweep. Like, we had people showing up to our food pantry with missing teeth. Like, it was not fucking good. LAPD was brutal, and they always are. And they will put on this happy face, like I was saying earlier, they'll come through and they'll offer people shelter, and occasionally they'll be at a good place, but typically a lot of these shelters are then unsafe and torture facilities, especially for like women and trans people. Like, it's insane. And they will tell them, like, okay, well, we're either going to beat the shit out of you and destroy everything you own, or you can go to this torture house. And those are your 2 options.
A well-funded one at that. So like,
Yeah, and how
family
long do they
housing,
even get to stay at these?
You can stay a while, actually, but like,
Well,
They
no,
can.
but-
They
but
get like 30 or 90 days
how
or
long?
something.
30 or 90 days? These people are
you can
homeless.
stay longer than
most of these people have been homeless for years or decades even.
Sure. No, I mean,
I'm
the
just saying, like,
ones-
30 or 90 days is nothing.
can stay
You're not
longer than that.
fixing the problem. Well, sure, but
Let me put it this way, because like, so in the valley, which I can speak on with,
sure.
quite knowledge, because I go to these shelters
Yeah.
twice a week, every week. Like, you can. So what they did before was people could stay for a while. Some people have been there for like 2 years because they're like, fuck it, they make me food and I can have a shower and I don't have to pay rent. But now that's changing. So, like I said, like with and it doesn't mean like that's everywhere. So, like in some places, like in Skid Row, like at the Wine Guard or different places like that, you cannot stay like you can in the valley. But in any case, like the point still remains because people are still ODing. A lot of people. I know of maybe 3 in the last week. Like, people are passing away, and so there's that. But like the other part is that because the Valley has such NIMBYism, not in my backyard, that because it has that, there aren't that many shelters, but even a lot of the ones that exist, they get tons of money. And they're now saying we want to kick people out. We don't want you here anymore. You lived here for 6 months. Too bad, so sad. You should have taken this tiny home that we offered you. You should have taken this and that, and because you didn't take it, for some people, because it's the wrong hood. Okay, so if you were like a blood and then you move to a neighborhood where your rivals live, you can't live there anymore. It doesn't matter that you're not anymore. um there's like a lot of pressure, and the pressure is going to increase. um and that's how I also feel. If I could just speak a little bit about union-y stuff, like I feel like our union, SEIU, should be like taking this on as a political fight. The union gave millions and millions and millions of our dues money that we pay. And I'm proud to be a union member. But we pay all these dues money for freaking Kamala Harris. Are you kidding me? For Joe Biden? That's ridiculous. That's not acceptable. And there's a reason why people stop being active, because when you do challenge the Democratic Party and dare to say that unions should have our own political party rather than like voting for these people who we strike against. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna just give me a moment to like rant just a little bit about this, because I feel like this contradiction is really important and a lot of people don't talk about it. So
no, we actually never get to talk about union stuff here, so go for it, please.
So my union's in contract negotiations right now, okay? So we're in contract negotiations, we're fighting for ourselves, and who are our enemies? The fucking board of supervisors. Every single one of them is a woman. Every single one of them but one is a Democrat, okay? And the other one's a Republican. So, like, why are we giving our money to this fucking party that's attacking us, literally attacking our wages, literally trying to stiff us in contract negotiations? And they're saying, oh, we got to protest them, stand up, fight back. When we fight, we win, saying all this rhetoric, and at the same time telling us to vote for the same political organization that is like attacking us nationally. And that's the Democratic Party. And so to me, it's like our workers need our own political organizations that represent our politics, that also like allow us to become like combative, so that when they go against our politics of like against police and for better wages and healthcare, that we can strike. Union stuff pisses me off. Fucking hate that like our leadership gives all these money to these crappy Dems, when we should have our own organization and people would be excited about it. If Sean Fain was like, Biden, suck it, even though I'm not, Sean Fain has issues, but if a leader like that, or Sarah Nelson, who's like one of the air stewardesses, like union head of that they were like, you know what, we're going to form our own political organization, people would be stoked. People would be like, yes, let's do it, Instead, they like lined up around the Dems yet again.
And then he would be in a mysterious accident.
Yes, they do kill
Drew, you've been pretty quiet.
For the most part, I've just been kind of enjoying the conversation elsewhere. But I would say, like, on the whole, as it applies to the election, it was definitely the Democrats' election to lose, because there were so many stupid little things, even performative shit, that they could have done. It's sort of like Trump with COVID. All Trump had to do in 2020 was not fuck up COVID too badly, and he would have been reelected easily. But he went out of his way to fuck it up. And I think the Democrats went out of their way to alienate their entire voter base.
Yeah, there's this weird reach they're doing, and I actually really don't get it, because, they're like that guy that's like, well, maybe if I call her the 35th time, then she'll say yes. It's really weird how the Democrats creepily court the right wing, and I don't get it. And I get it. I mean, maybe like I only assume they're like, well, as the Republicans are abandoning for the far right, maybe we can get those moderate, conservatives. I don't know. Maybe that's the goal, but like, people who are on the right are never going to vote Democrat, no matter what. I mean, dude, we had Obama tried to put a Republican on the Supreme Court, and they said fucking no. We had Kamala Harris saying she's going to put Republicans on her cabinet, and she's out there fucking holding hands with Liz Cheney and shit. Like, it was just weird, the amount of smooching they were trying to do to the right wing, who was never going to vote for them anyway, and then they completely abandoned the left.
Yeah.
They're like,
Actually,
I mean, we
I have
could
numbers
stop
for
a
that.
genocide, but let's hang out with Liz Cheney instead. It made no fucking sense. And all they do is I mean, God, how much of the Muslim vote got creamed her in Pennsylvania?
Oh yeah.
Because of this?
She lost Pennsylvania because of it. She lost Michigan because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, if you want to know just how badly this failed, the Democrats supporting the moderate Republican vote, because I got numbers. In 2020, the amount of Republicans that voted for Democrats was 5%. 95% otherwise, or it's like 94, 95%, whatever, voted for Trump. So, I mean, you can expect that. In this election, 4% went for Kamala Harris, and the same number went for Trump. So Trump's remained unchanged. She actually lost votes by courting Republicans. That is how badly and completely, utterly did they fail to judge what sort of demographic that they're going for there. And I think they're going to learn the wrong lesson. They're going to think, well, no, it's just misogyny. It's just because of racism. It's just because of all these other issues. I think the Democrats are going to double down on all of that rhetoric rather than actually speaking to working class issues that will get what used to be their voter base.
I mean, like I said, the Democratic Party has had a supermajority multiple times and has never even tried, never even attempt to codify Roe v. Wade. And we just recently elected the guy who trashed Anita Hill. Like, do we just... I mean, like, Biden is the one who led the charge to defame and destroy Anita Hill when she dared speak out against Clarence Thomas. Like, we put a misogynist with credible rape allegations in office to a party who will do nothing with women's autonomy except fundraise on it. And they somehow expect that they're owed a vote, and I think... that is comical. What's disheartening is their voter base, because you can't even talk about not voting Democrat and not hit with, well, you don't give a fuck about women. It's like, Palestinian women are getting C-sections without anesthesia right now. They're getting blown up under tents of children are being murdered. Like, it's an orphan crisis right now, besides just like the famine and starvation going on and the murder. Like, women are being destroyed overseas. But there's a coexist sticker on the bomb, so it's okay. And it's just that same, like, as long as a Democrat does it, it's fine. We can trash abortion rights, totally okay. We can go after sexual assault whistleblowers, it's fine as long as a Democrat does it. And it's like, I've been saying this for the last year to everyone. Like, just tell me something Trump did that Biden fixed. And no one's got anything. There's fucking nothing. And it's when there's a Republican in office, it's, oh my God, it's going to be the worst thing ever. He's going to be a dictator and he's got so much power now. And then when a Democrat's in office, it's like, oh no, he's just a little baby and he has no power and he can't do anything. It's not his fault. The Senate was mean to him.
That's their strategy. Even with a super majority, like you said. And also, I mean, it's like everything that they said that they supported in 2020, which galvanized people, they didn't do. Like, even fracking. So North Carolina was underwater. And they said, we still love fossil fuels. Let's do that. And that's what they kind of stood on. And I think there's going to be a crisis. But I think there's also a potential of like more political organization. And obviously that's what we're writing about in Left Voice, is like about how like we need to figure that out politically, and the perspective of a united front, like a class independent united front. The Democrats are going to claim, I mean, they might, we'll see, but I think the Republicans are really going to try to implement a lot of like anti-democratic legislation. And the Democrats are going to claim to be the saviors of that. They're going to, they may not do the pink pussy hats like they did, but like they're going to claim to be fighters of that. And I think that we need to be very clear that like these people are not like aligned with us, and like in reality they're just trying to lead people back into the same system that they defend, with, I mean, I'm sure there's like with like the failures of like other social movements, I'm sure that there's like a reactionary swing, like there's truth to that. But there's also like a lot of disgust with the Democrats, like, and from reading people's posts on like Black Twitter and like Instagram and things like that, like a lot of folks have said the Democrats think that because we're Black, they own our votes. And that we're just going to vote for them no matter what. And that's why I'm voting for Trump. Like, obviously, the conclusion is wrong, but like, there is a real hatred for the hypocrisy that you pointed out. They claim to support, Black people, and then they say more money for police. And then they call the police on us. Like they say.
Well, they say they're pro union, and Biden shuts down the fucking train workers,
the railroad workers. That's right. So like people notice the hypocrisy, but like the conclusion is obviously a problematic one. Like Trump fucking doesn't support the railroad workers either. Trump supports the police and doesn't support Black people either. And like that's the other thing I think is that some people see Trump as like, okay, so there's this thing that I like about him, and I'm just gonna ignore these other things that I don't like. So like a lot of white women voted for Trump. They know he's a rapist. They know he says sexist shit. They know it. But they're like, well, I like his immigration
They're willing
thing.
to overlook it.
Yeah, well, I got to check.
Because of reasons.
Check.
Yeah, people are willing to overlook a lot of what Trump does, and that's one of the things I find really mind-boggling. It's just how uniquely
Same here.
bad, and also uniquely honest. He's actually very honest about what a terrible person he is, because he can't help himself.
Absolutely.
And it's still not a deal breaker.
That's the difference, though, because Biden is a racist rapist. He's misogynistic. He supports white supremacy. He supports colonialism. He supports the military-industrial complex. He's a fucking fascist, too. But he's polite on Twitter. Like, that's what it really comes down to, is you have the two things. You have people who are so fed up with the establishment, they like the racist, sexist rhetoric that Trump says, and they like that he's not part of this system that they say, oh, the swamp. Like, it's
but he is
deep
part of that
state
system.
corruption bullshit.
That's the thing.
Of course he is.
System.
Of course he is.
not
Elon
totally,
Musk is
though.
a
No,
fucking
he's not.
moron, but he portrays
He's
himself
not.
as Iron Man.
But he's not totally part of it. Kamala Harris has been a politician since she was in her freaking 20s. Okay? Like, she's been on his trajectory, and he's not, because he doesn't need to be, because he's a freaking capitalist whose mommy, daddy, Nazi money, like, allowed him to be a billionaire. So he's not actually part of it. Doesn't mean that he's not fucked up, but I'm just trying to make a point here about, like, these two different groups of people. Biden, careerist. Hillary Clinton, careerist. Spend their entire time in some office or another. And Trump is like, well, I got money and I just say what I want. And like that appealed to like those groups of people.
But that's what I'm saying, is that they're divided on that. There's the half that go, Trump's an outsider, Trump says what he wants, and he says all these racist, awful things that I like, and he does it in a way that pisses off the status quo. And then the people who are like, well, I really, deep in my heart, like racism, but I don't like people who say it out loud. That's what the Democratic Party's for. Like, that's the thing, is liberal voters, and again, I'm sorry, like I'll hate on maybe I'm the one in this podcast crew here who hates libs the most, but like libs don't give a shit about any demographic that isn't theirs. Like, you will have plenty of white women giving a shit about women's issues and gay issues and that kind of thing, but they don't give a fuck about people of color or about people overseas. Like, I've said this, like, one of my favorite things I've ever seen in my life. I remember going to the first Women's Day protest when Trump was in office, and there was a woman walking around with the best sign I ever saw, and it was this huge sign, and it just said, I'm going to see all you nice white ladies at the next BLM protest, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, because white women don't give a shit about people of color in general as a demographic. Like, yes, obviously they're outliers, whatever. But in general, white women and white men do not show up to protect people of color.
I don't know if that's always true in every point.
I said not always true. I said they're outliers.
It's not outliers like individual people, but like moments in history. So like I was looking up an article actually recently about like BLM and like the decline in support. So there's less support for it now than there was in 2020. I think I remember when George Floyd was first murdered, the support for the Minneapolis precinct being set on fire was higher than any other member in Congress. So that includes white people. Like in Portland, and I always think of Portland, my heart to Portland, Oregon for doing this, was that in 2020, they fought the federal troops for 3 months. These are white people. Fought the federal troops for 3 months pitch battles. And the parents, so the activists fought them, and then the parents of the activists fought them, and they did this brilliant thing where they took leaf blowers and they like blew the tear gas with the leaf blowers. Like, I've never seen something so white and suburban in my life, but like that's what they did. They showed it. It was brilliant. It was brilliant, and they
No,
did it.
it just makes me chuckle.
There's some white dude in fucking socks with sandals on, blowing his leaf blower, fighting the cops.
It's fucking genius.
It's genius. It is genius. We should get leaf blowers. But like the reason why I say that is because there's moments in history where people have the potential to rise up, and like, and I obviously I wouldn't be a revolutionary if I didn't believe that like the people who have reactionary beliefs today could change and have different beliefs tomorrow. It doesn't
100%.
It doesn't mean we don't acknowledge the way people are and how they are right now. But I guess what I'm saying is like there's an array of these millions of people, tens of millions of people, or I don't remember how many, that voted for Trump or voted for Harris. And like those people in a year from now, depending on what's happening in the world, in class struggle, what kind of attacks the capitalists and their state impose upon us, could have different perspectives, different opinions. Um, and I feel like it would be good for us to see like how, now when you say, because when you say liberals, I'm thinking of just like, you know, my aunt who probably voted for Harris. Okay, like, or whatever. But what I'm saying is like these people's perspectives can change. And I hope they do. I feel like we have
they
to count on
absolutely
them.
can.
Yeah.
But like as somebody who's crazy super lily white, like I don't know, like I feel I have that leeway to criticize white people for this because I mean, what are white people, like 65% of the population or something like that? Like never are they in an apportionate. What's the word I'm looking for? Not
Proportionate.
Like not like yeah, an apportionate number of people at leftist movements. At least in my years of experience out there, like white people are the ones that are never in the majority in this stuff. And again, there are moments and it's amazing, but I think part of that needs to be acknowledged that like, and not just white people in general, because there's lots of fucking white comrades. I'm saying like white liberals in the United States. America has a long history of playing race politics to keep the white proletariat from actually rising up for any social movement that involves anything other than them.
That's
And I just think
absolutely
that needs to be, but that needs to be talked about more and criticized more, in my opinion. Like, because because I just think if you have so many people who think that they can just vote blue harder next time, and that's enough. And it's not. You need to fucking support a union. You need to go to fucking protests. You need to get involved with organizations. Like, you actually have to do something besides show up once every 4 years and vote blue.
Oh, well, that's absolutely true, especially because the popular vote actually doesn't elect the president. So
Yeah.
it's not even that. I guess the differing point, the point that I was trying to make wasn't that there isn't chauvinism in the United States. That's the bedrock of this country. That's literally why the capitalist class still exists. From Bacon's Rebellion till today, they had to create a system of like privileges and incentives for white people. Like and not just like, oh, what is it called? Not passive racism. What is that word that they say? Implicit racism. You know, one of those corporate words that they use to say like, oh, you're not being intentionally racist. You're just implicit bias. That's what it is.
Yeah, you just happen to throw out more resumes with black sounding names.
You just which is like also okay. Like, I'm glad that like less of that happened, and I'm glad that there's more attention to how racism is systemic. But that's not what we fought for when we protested and people burned down cop cars. They didn't do that so that you can get a DEI consultant. Like, that wasn't what the fight was for. The fight was for the police to stop killing black people, but like and to stop racism everywhere. But I think what I'm saying is that like in the moments where social movements have been the most successful is one, where socialists have been at the leadership of them, and two, when there was an intentional anti-racist perspective along with a class perspective. in the 1930s is probably the best example. The fights against evictions, the fights against lynchings, the fights to organize all workers, the CIO. Like that was a time period where all workers were being organized versus the AFL. So like the AFL and the CIO were like competing unions.
Mm-hmm.
And the AFL was older and it was more of a craft union, so it organized people based on their specific skill. Like you could say this California Nurse Association is kind of like a craft union because they only organize nurses. Versus like SEIU who organizes nurses, janitors, paraprofessionals, da da da.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the
anyway,
AFL was really niche, whereas like people like them, like the Knights of Labor and stuff, were about everyone.
right, and then the CIO was like way more militant, and obviously, who's the head of the CIO at the time when it was independent? The communists, the trade unionists, and so, and then when they merged together, it was a an unholy alliance in blood, marked by McCarthyism, to kick out the trade unionists, to kick out the communists, to kick out the militants, under the guise of anti-communism. That was when the AFL-CIO came together in 1954, I think. So
Well,
like,
and right after that is when you get Canaprolo, like for
so
the same
there's,
reason.
so like when we think about that period, the CIO, like the unions were not just organizing bread and butter contract issues; they were organizing against racism. They were organizing against evictions. They were taking political positions. The other problem, of course, I'm just going to say it, fucking Stalinism. So, like, I'm a Trotskyist, all right? That's who we are. Gang, gang, Fourth International, let's go. Um, and, like, part of what happened was that, like, a lot of those people funneled folks to support the war effort, i.e., Roosevelt, and the Democrats, rather than their own political organizations, and that was led by the Comintern, that was led by the Soviet Union, and so on. I suggest I'm going to suggest a film. It's a great film. It's called Salt of the Earth. And it was made in the 50s. It was made with the mine workers of New Mexico being actors in it, and a few other, like, you know, actual actors. It's a black and white film. It's a great film. And what it is it's about a strike that the miners take. And then Taft-Hartley comes and says that the workers, who are majority men, Mexican men and white men, can't picket. So the wives of the workers take up the picket line and fight the cops. And so, because of that, the issues around patriarchy, social reproductive labor, that's what we call it now. They didn't call it that then. They called it the women's question. Like all those things have to be taken up because the men can't picket, the women are picketing, and the men are ending up having to do the housework. It's a fantastic film, and I highly recommend it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the relationship of exploitation and oppression is forever intertwined. And with this election, it shows that. You're not going to just get people elected based on just bread and butter issues by ignoring oppression, and not just in a not be nicey nice, like don't be a transphobe because it's mean, don't be racist because it's mean, but like actually like our economic interests are together, and if trans people's rights are taken away, that is an open possibility to exploit more people. That and if immigrants are allowed to be blamed for the reason why people are homeless, people literally say immigrants are the reason why people are homeless. Like, no, it's not.
Oh, yeah,
The
there was the whole
landlords
thing
are
the
the reason.
Republicans were using, that like the federal government was buying illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants' houses, and it was like, what?
So fuck, it's just a fucking lie. And like, no,
Yeah.
it's
Of
the
course it is.
landlords that are the reason why people are homeless because the rent's too damn high and wages are too low. That's why. I feel like we have to kind of bring back, reunite this fight of exploitation and oppression being together and being part of like the class struggle. Just like the anti-Zionist movement, the Jewish anti-Zionist movement is old as hell. It existed before the state of Israel was created. um and now that's being reforged, which to me is like amazing. It's like Lord of the Rings. They're coming back together. The gang's all back, and so I feel like we have to bring those things back together again.
One thing I actually am happy about that I've noticed, I was really worried, like because I've been in the Palestine scene since George W. Bush, and like people used to like not even know what was going on with Israel and Palestine. Now it's a big issue, and once Palestine became front page news, I was actually really worried we were going to see a lot of anti-Semitic, Nazi-esque orgs jump to that one, and it's actually it stayed pretty fucking left. And those guys aren't welcome, and it's actually been like I've been really happy that the anti-Zionist movement has actually stayed pretty fucking pure with that. It's like that's a piece of good news I was not expecting that I'm really happy about. With that'll actually probably cut us here, but dude, thank you for coming on. You've been fantastic. I hope you come back. We would love to have you.
Good
here.
Discussion, and I appreciate it.
It would be nice if Jordan from the 805 Uncensored wasn't the only repeat customer we had. That'd be great.
Sure. Let me know.
The only multi-session guest we ever have is an anarchist.
Yeah.
But anyway, tell us where people could find you and get involved with all the amazing shit you do.
Okay, cool. So I'm part of Left Voice, leftvoice.org. If you want to check us out, we're on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. If you want to check me out, I'm on Instagram at OOLIA17, 1917, gang gang. I'm on Twitter. I forget my Twitter name. It's just Julia Wallace. That's me. I think probably the next thing that, if you check out Left Voice, there's like a lot of stuff that folks are doing in other cities. We're going to be having an event, a virtual event, which you are all invited to, December 5th to discuss the elections. So if you want to come through, you're so welcome. Just check out Left Voice for like more information. And
what's that website?
What's that?
What's the website?
leftvoice.org.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I was walking my goldfish. Say that again.
It's it's leftvoice.org. And if you habla español, somos parte de Izquierda Diario. That's our website, La Izquierda Diario Network. Again, we publish in 7 different languages. We're in 14 different countries, mostly Latin America. Another Instagram thing, SEIU Drop the Cops, which is a program to disaffiliate the police from our unions. Cops aren't workers; they're strike breakers, they're evictors, they're the defenders,
class traitors.
That's right, descendants of slave patrols, and they're our class enemies. They're the attack dogs for capital. And the last thing is Purple Up for Palestine, which is SEIU's rank and file organization to support Palestine. Free Palestine from the river to the sea. Thank you for having me. It's really been a pleasure, and I really just appreciate you all doing this and continuing to make this content.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Again, please go check out Julia. Check out Left Voice. They do really awesome shit. I'm not just saying that. I actually do read them. They're a great scene. And we will see you guys next week. And remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and that the revolution is you.